Marcus Chen pushed his pregnant ex-girlfriend to the floor and called her worthless in front of hundreds of shoppers who filmed everything. His new girlfriend laughed, recording it all for Instagram. But Marcus made one fatal mistake. He never looked at Valentina's left hand, never knew she was now married to Korea's most feared Mafia boss, and by the time he realized that, it was already too late. Welcome to the channel, lovelies. Please hit the subscribe button. This is where karma hits back. Valentina didn't make a sound when she fell, not a gasp, not a cry, but the collision of her body against the floor echoed through the Apex Mall's luxury wing like a verdict. Heads turned. Conversations stopped. She landed hard on her knees, her dark curls falling forward to hide her face, one hand instinctively going to her rounded belly. 6 months pregnant, visible even through her flowing black dress. Around her lay plain shopping bags with their contents spilling out. Stuffed animals, wrapped toys, documentation she'd been organizing all afternoon. Marcus Chen stood over her, hand still extended from the push, chest heaving like he'd just won something instead of assaulting a pregnant woman, half his size between Cartier and Dior. Pathetic, he announced to the gathering crowd, voice dripping with satisfaction. Still the same broke, worthless? He didn't finish. His girlfriend Ashley cut him off with a laugh that could shatter crystal. Her phone raised high, recording everything with the manic energy of someone who already knew which caption would get the most engagement. Her designer labels caught the chandelier light as she adjusted her angle, hunting for Valentina's face. This wasn't how Sunday was supposed to go. 20 minutes earlier, Valentina had been selecting picture books for the pediatric ward at Memorial Hospital, moving through the bookstore with the quiet efficiency of someone who preferred to be invisible. Simple black maternity dress, minimal makeup, nothing flashy. She'd chosen this mall specifically because it was large enough to disappear into, just another pregnant woman in the Sunday afternoon shopping crowd. Except Marcus had always been good at finding her. She'd seen him exit Dior with Ashley draped on his arm like an expensive accessory, all blonde highlights and loud perfume, had watched recognition hit his face like lightning. Watched something ugly replace his surprise, something that looked like an opportunity he couldn't pass up. Still shopping where you don't belong, he'd said, loud enough to make nearby shoppers pause mid-stride. She'd tried to walk away. That's what you were supposed to do with men like Marcus. Disengage, remove yourself, don't give them the reaction they're hunting for. But Marcus had followed, and gotten louder. And now here she was, on her knees on marble that probably cost more per square foot than most people's monthly rent, while strangers pulled out their phones and security guards stood frozen near the Cartier entrance like statues. Those guards had watched everything, watched Marcus follow her, watched him back her into the center of the corridor where the floor opened into a wide circle beneath the crystal chandelier. Watched him push her hard enough that she'd stumbled backward, bags flying from her hands, her pregnant body hitting the floor with a sickening thud that made several onlookers gasp. They were watching now as Marcus circled her, his Italian loafers clicking against marble with each predatory step. Marcus Chen spent money here. Marcus Chen knew people. Marcus Chen threw his weight around like a man who understood exactly how much privilege could purchase. What Marcus didn't know was that the mall had changed ownership 37 days ago. "Look, everyone," he continued, playing to his audience the way he'd always played to every audience. "This is what happens when gold diggers think they can play in the big leagues. Probably not even my kid." A woman in Chanel clutched her purse tighter. A teenager's eyes went wide. An elderly man looked around for help that wasn't coming. Ashley moved closer, angling her phone downward. "This is going to be everywhere," she whispered to Marcus, not quietly enough. Valentina's phone started ringing. The sound cut through the jazz and the whispers, a simple ringtone. Nothing fancy. It vibrated against the marble where it had fallen from her bag, screen lighting up with an incoming call. Nampyeon. Husband. The Korean characters glowed bright against the black screen, visible to anyone paying attention. Marcus wasn't paying attention. He was too busy gloating, too focused on his performance to notice the phone or what it said or why that might matter. But something else was happening that Marcus wasn't noticing either. Valentina's left hand, the one braced against the floor, taking her weight, caught the light from the chandelier above. On her ring finger sat a black diamond, 14 carats, set in platinum so pure it looked like liquid moonlight. The kind of ring that didn't come from a jewelry store. The kind that came from a private jeweler who didn't advertise and didn't take walk-in appointments. The kind that came with a name that mattered. Marcus kicked one of her scattered bags. Fake bags for a fake life. The bag skidded across the marble. A receipt slipped out. Hospital letterhead, donation documentation, a number with too many zeros. $50,000 in toys and books for sick children. Marcus thought they were her personal shopping bags. Thought she was still the struggling girl he'd dated 3 years ago, still pretending to belong in spaces like this. He had no idea what those bags really contained, just like he had no idea about the 2 men in sharp suits who had materialized from the crowd, positioned strategically behind him. Discreet earpieces, hands clasped in front of them, waiting, not intervening. Not yet, just waiting for a signal that hadn't come. Across the city in an office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Han River, a man sat perfectly still. His Tom Ford suit was charcoal grey, cut with the precision of someone who understood that power lived in details. His desk was mahogany, imported, expensive enough to buy a small car. His office was silent except for the quiet hum of multiple security monitors built into the wall, live feeds from locations all across Seoul. One monitor showed the luxury wing of Apex Mall, showed Valentina on her knees, one hand protecting her belly, showed Marcus standing over her, showed the crowd with their phones raised like witnesses who'd already decided not to testify. The man's face was calm, unnaturally calm, the kind of calm that made his assistant take an involuntary step backward toward the door, even though he hadn't been dismissed. His knuckles were white against the mahogany desk. The wood cracked. Just slightly. Just enough. "Cancel everything," he said. His voice was quiet, controlled, each word precisely placed like a blade being positioned. "Sir, you have the board meeting in 30 minutes. I said everything." The assistant's hand was already on the door handle. In the mall management office 3 floors above the luxury wing, someone was having a very different kind of panic. "Rewind that," the mall director said, leaning closer to the security monitor. "Go back 30 seconds. His assistant's hands shook as he dragged the footage backward, watching Valentina stumble, watching the bags scatter, watching the crowd gather. "Sir, that's Mrs. Jin in the luxury wing, and she's pregnant." The director's face went pale. "Oh, God." The director's voice dropped to a whisper. "Oh, God, Chen doesn't know." Down in the luxury wing, Valentina's phone was still ringing. Marcus was still gloating. Ashley was still recording. The security detail was still waiting. And somewhere across the city, a man in a Tom Ford suit was already moving. 3 years ago, Valentina believed in love the way children believe in magic, completely, without evidence, against all logic. She met Marcus Chen in an economics lecture during her junior year at State. Back when she was still working 2 jobs to keep her scholarship, and he was the charming business major who always sat 3 rows ahead, asking questions that made professors pause and reconsider their lesson plans. He had this way of looking at her across the campus library, like she was the only person in the room who understood what he was trying to build. "I'm going places," he'd told her on their 3rd date, his hand warm around hers. "And I want you there with me." She'd believed him. That belief cost her everything. When Marcus got accepted into Wharton's MBA program, prestigious, competitive, $80,000 a year just for tuition, his family cut him off entirely. Punishment, he'd explained, for refusing to end things with a girl who didn't come from the right background, who didn't have the right last name, who worked weekend catering jobs in a borrowed white shirt to pay her own rent. "They don't understand us," Marcus had said, his voice breaking in that way that made her chest ache. "But we'll figure it out together, right?" Together meant Valentina figured it out alone. She took a third job doing overnight data entry, her eyes burning under fluorescent lights while Marcus studied in their studio apartment. Paid his tuition in installments that carved chunks out of her account. Covered his rent when he needed to focus on networking instead of part-time work. Bought him tailored suits for investor meetings while she wore the same interview outfit, black pants, white shirt, cardigan with a button missing, for 2 straight years. She ate ramen 4 nights a week so he could eat steak with venture capitalists who might fund his dreams. She told herself it was temporary, that once he graduated, once his startup launched, once they made it, they'd make it together. 8 months into his MBA program, she found out she was pregnant. The test sat on the bathroom counter of their studio apartment for 20 minutes before she could look at it again, hoping the second line might disappear if she just wished hard enough. They were barely surviving. She was working 70-hour weeks across 3 jobs. Marcus was drowning in coursework and pitch meetings. A baby was impossible. But when she finally told him, sitting on their second-hand couch with her hands shaking in her lap, Marcus had pulled her close and kissed her forehead with a tenderness she'd almost forgotten he possessed. "We'll figure it out," he'd whispered. "You're my lucky charm, Val. This baby will be our future." She'd believed him. Started saving every penny she could scrape together, tips from catering, overtime pay, coins found between couch cushions. Built a small nest for their future in a savings account she never told Marcus about because she wanted it to be a surprise. Proof that they could do this, that she could handle it. Marcus's final semester, his tech startup got seed funding, $2 million from David Wong, a billionaire venture capitalist whose name opened doors across 3 continents. Suddenly, Marcus had money, status, a future that looked nothing like their studio apartment. The launch party was at the Waldorf, all marble and crystal and people in clothes that cost more than Valentina's car. She was 6 months pregnant by then. Exhausted from pulling double shifts to keep their savings growing, her best dress, bought 3 years ago at Target but clean, carefully ironed, stretching tight across her belly. She felt like an imposter walking through those golden doors. But Marcus had insisted she come, had said he wanted her there, had said she was part of this. "Marcus, introduce me to your lovely girlfriend," David Wong said, extending his hand with the casual confidence of someone who'd never been told no in his life. Valentina smiled, reached out to shake his hand. "Oh, this is Valentina, my assistant," Marcus said without hesitation, without a pause, without even looking at her face to see how those words landed. Wong's eyebrows lifted slightly. "Ah, you should give her some time off. She looks exhausted," Marcus laughed, the easy, charming laugh he used with investors. "You know how it is. Hard to find good help." Valentina's hand hung frozen in mid-air between them. The room tilted. Her lungs forgot how to process oxygen. Somewhere behind her, champagne glasses clinked in celebration. His assistant. Good help. Not his partner. Not his future. Not the woman carrying his child. Just help. That night the cramping started. Sharp. Persistent, wrong in a way that made her hands shake as she drove herself to the hospital because Marcus was at an after-party with Wong and some Series A investors, and she didn't want to bother him with something that was probably nothing, probably just stress, probably fine. It wasn't fine. "I'm sorry," the doctor said at 1:47 a.m., her voice professionally gentle in the way that meant she'd delivered this news before. "There's no heartbeat." Valentina delivered their daughter at 2:13 a.m. in a hospital room that smelled like disinfectant and broken promises. The nurses held her hand because no one else was there. She named the baby Lily, after her grandmother, after spring flowers, after hope. And Marcus never knew because Marcus never asked. He visited the hospital once, stood in the doorway of her room like he was afraid to come closer, his hands in his pockets, his expression carefully neutral. The doctor said it was stress, he said, not quite meeting her eyes. You should have managed better. 2 weeks later, his startup's Series A closed at $15 million. 1 month later, he moved into a penthouse in the financial district with floor-to-ceiling windows and a doorman who wore white gloves. Valentina was still in their studio apartment when the eviction notice appeared on the door. Marcus had stopped paying rent 3 weeks earlier, stopped answering her calls, stopped existing in her life like she'd been nothing more than a plot point in his origin story. She tried his number 1 last time from the shelter of a coffee shop, her belongings packed into her car, her hands wrapped around a cup she couldn't afford but needed for the warmth. The number had been disconnected. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You were holding me back. This is for the best. Here's something for your trouble. Venmo notification. $200. $200 for 2 years of her life. For his tuition, his rent, his future. For their daughter, who would never breathe, never laugh, never know that her father had valued her at approximately 33 cents per day of her existence. Valentina lost her jobs, missed too many shifts during recovery, couldn't explain why her hands shook when people asked what was wrong, lost her apartment to an illegal eviction. She didn't have the energy to fight. Lost her savings to hospital bills that multiplied like accusations. Lost everything except the weight of what she'd given away. 3 months living in her car, parked in different lots each night to avoid security. 6 months in a women's shelter, staring at ceiling tiles and wondering how love had become this. 1 year rebuilding from nothing, brick by brick, breath by breath, and now here she was 3 years later on marble floors that cost more than the car she'd lived in. Still on her knees. Still dealing with Marcus Chen. But something had changed. She was 6 months pregnant again, this time with a baby she wanted. A baby whose father loved her. A baby who would grow up knowing safety and stability and what it meant to be chosen every single day. The phone call reached the mall's general manager while he was reviewing quarterly reports in his office on the 3rd floor. He picked up on the 2nd ring, distracted, already thinking about his next meeting. Park speaking. Whatever voice came through that phone turned his face from tan to chalk white in under 3 seconds. The phone hit his desk. He was running before it stopped bouncing. His assistant looked up from her computer, eyes wide. Mr. Park never runs, she whispered to the intern beside her, but Mr. Park was already gone. His expensive shoes slapping against marble as he sprinted toward the luxury wing like his entire career depended on getting there 30 seconds ago. Staff scattered in his wake, confused, alarmed, suddenly very aware that something had shifted in the building's atmosphere. Down in the luxury wing, Marcus was still performing. You see, he said, gesturing at Valentina like she was evidence in a case he'd already won. This is what happens when people try to live beyond their means. When they think they can... He stopped. Mall security, the same guards who'd stood frozen minutes ago, suddenly started moving with purpose, radiating the kind of alertness that meant someone important was coming. People in expensive suits Marcus didn't recognize, materialized from nowhere, speaking quietly into earpieces, their eyes scanning the crowd with professional efficiency. Sir, one of them said, approaching Marcus with careful formality, we need you to come with us. Marcus laughed. Actually laughed. Do you know who I am? I'm Marcus Chen, CEO of Chen Technologies. I have lawyers. The crowd was parting, not just moving aside, parting, like a sea that knew better than to resist. The silence came first. The kind of silence that meant fear, that meant recognition, that meant everyone in the vicinity had suddenly remembered they had somewhere else to be, but couldn't look away. He didn't walk fast, didn't need to. People moved before he reached them, some instinct older than thought telling them to step aside, to lower their voices, to make themselves smaller in the presence of something larger. Jin Dae-hyun was 32 years old and wore a Tom Ford suit the way some men wore authority, effortlessly, without announcement, like power was simply another word for breathing. His face was composed, unremarkable at first glance, the kind of face you might pass on the street without noticing, until you noticed everything else. Security straightened automatically when he passed. Store managers bowed slightly, reflex born from years of conditioning. The general manager, Mr. Park, who never ran, was literally trembling as he approached, trying to find words that wouldn't make this situation worse. Every luxury retail employee on the floor knew that face. He was on their VIP lists, the kind of client whose purchases got mentioned in quarterly reports. Mall security knew him because his company, Daehyun Group, had purchased the building 37 days ago, along with 6 other premium properties across the city. Anyone in real estate knew his name because Daehyun Group owned half of Seoul's skyline. Anyone in underground circles knew his name for entirely different reasons. The kind of reasons that didn't make it into Forbes profiles. The kind of power that governments feared but couldn't prove. The sanitized version, self-made billionaire by 25, legitimate empire in real estate and tech and private equity. The real version, don't cross him. Ever. Under any circumstances. Not even by accident. Jin walked past Marcus like he was furniture. Didn't acknowledge him, didn't speak to him, didn't even glance in his direction. Marcus might as well have been air. Invisible. Beneath notice. The crowd inhaled collectively when Jin knelt beside Valentina. No one had ever seen him kneel. Not in photos, not in public, not in the carefully curated image that appeared in business magazines. Men like Jin Dae-hyun didn't kneel, but here he was on marble floors between Cartier and Dior, his expression transforming into something the crowd couldn't quite process. "Yobo," he said softly. "Darling." The Korean word intimate meant only for her. His hands were steady as he helped her up, gentle, careful, like she was made of something precious and breakable. One hand instinctively went to her belly, checking, protecting. He brushed her dark curls back from her face with infinite tenderness, his fingers trailing along her jaw to check for injuries the crowd couldn't see. "Are you hurt? Is the baby?" Still in Korean. Still soft. The crowd couldn't hear the exact words, but they could see his face, the most feared man in the city, looking at her like she was made of light. Valentina shook her head slightly. "We're okay. Just shaken." Something passed between them. Communication too subtle for the watching crowd to interpret. Jin's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly as he examined the scrape on her knee where it had hit the marble, his hand still protective over her rounded belly. "Who did this?" His voice remained gentle, but something underneath it made the temperature drop. Valentina gestured toward Marcus without looking at him. Didn't need to look. Knew exactly where he was standing. Jin's expression didn't change, but something in the air shifted, like the moment before lightning strikes when the atmosphere becomes charged with inevitability. "Press charges," she shook her head. "Not yet. I want him to understand first." Jin kissed her forehead, his hand cradling the back of her head with devastating care, his other hand still resting protectively on her belly. "As you wish." When he turned to his head of security, a man who had appeared silently beside him, as if summoned by thought alone, his voice hadn't changed, still calm, still quiet. But everyone within earshot felt their survival instincts activate. "The usual investigation," Jin said in English now, his words precise and measured. "Financial, personal, professional. I want to know everywhere he's cut corners. Everyone he's stepped on. Everyone he owes. Everyone he's lied to." The security chief nodded once. "Sir, for a full workup we'll need at least—" "You have 6 hours." Marcus finally found his voice. "You can't just— I have rights. I have lawyers." His confidence was cracking at the edges, but he clung to it desperately. "This is harassment. I'll sue. Do you know who—" Jin looked at him. Really looked, for the first time since entering the luxury wing. The temperature didn't just drop, it plummeted. People at the edges of the crowd took involuntary steps backward. Ashley's phone was still recording, but her hand had started shaking, the frame going unsteady. "You pushed a pregnant woman." Jin's voice was still quiet, conversational almost. "My pregnant wife." The pause stretched. "I won't kill you," Jin continued. "That would be mercy." Jin turned back to Valentina, his hand protective at the small of her back, guiding her toward a private elevator Marcus hadn't even noticed was there. She was trembling, not from fear, but from something else, something that looked like relief, like safety, like finally having someone stand between her and the world. Jin whispered something to her as the elevator doors opened, his hand never leaving her belly. The crowd couldn't hear it, strained to catch even a syllable, but Valentina nodded and leaned into him slightly, and then they were gone. The doors closed on polished steel. What Marcus didn't know, 6 investigators were already pulling his financial records from 3 different databases. His bank accounts were already flagged for suspicious activity review. His business partners were already getting calls from unknown numbers asking very specific questions. His new girlfriend, Ashley, was already Googling Jin Dae-yeon with shaking fingers, her face going progressively paler with each search result. His entire world was already unraveling. He had maybe 4 hours before it hit. Marcus Chen woke up at 9:47 a.m. with a headache that felt like divine punishment and a mouth that tasted like regret. He'd celebrated last night. Really celebrated. Expensive whiskey with the guys from his old business school crew, bottle service at that club in Gangnam where they knew his name, Ashley hanging off his arm like a trophy he'd earned. He'd put Valentina in her place. Finally, after 3 years of wondering if she'd somehow landed on her feet, after 3 years of occasional guilty thoughts, he'd drowned in work and women and the kind of success that made people forget to ask questions. She'd looked pathetic on that marble floor, small, broken, pregnant and helpless, exactly like she deserved. He rolled over, reaching for his phone on the nightstand. 47 missed calls. His stomach dropped before his brain caught up to why that might be a problem. The first voicemail was from his lawyer, time-stamped 6:23. "Marcus, don't talk to anyone, don't post anything, don't leave your apartment. Call me immediately." The second was from his PR person at 6:31. "I'm out. I can't be associated with this. My reputation, I just can't. I'm sorry." The third was from his mother at 7:15 a.m., and her voice cracked in a way he'd never heard before. "What have you done? You pushed a pregnant woman? What have you done to this family?" He sat up too fast. The room spun. His phone buzzed in his hand. A notification from Twitter, then another, then 5 more in rapid succession until the vibration became constant, like a scream he couldn't silence. Marcus Chen was trending. Not trending like successful CEO launches new product trending. Trending like your life is over trending. Trending like the entire internet had decided to show up at your door with torches. The video was everywhere. Ashley's video, the one she'd posted last night with 3 laughing emojis and the caption, "When gold diggers get reality checks," had been downloaded, mirrored, screenshot, and reposted across every platform humans had invented for public shaming. Except now, the comments weren't laughing with her. They were eviscerating her. "You think assault is funny? He pushed a pregnant woman. Imagine filming someone getting attacked and laughing. This is sociopathic behavior. That's Jin Dae-hyun's wife." They're both finished. "I hope you both rot." Ashley had deleted the original post. Marcus could see the "this content is no longer available" message where it used to be. But deletion meant nothing in the age of screenshots. The internet was forever, and the internet had decided to remember. His phone rang. Unknown number, he answered without thinking. "Mr. Chen, this is Rebecca Park from Business Insider. We're running a story about SEC investigations into Chen Technologies' Series A and B funding rounds." Would you care to comment on allegations of investor fraud, inflated user metrics, and fabricated revenue projections? Marcus's mouth opened. Nothing came out. We have documentation, she continued, her voice professionally neutral. Internal emails, spreadsheets showing original versus reported numbers, falsified user data. An anonymous tip was filed with the SEC at 3 a.m. this morning with extensive evidence. Do you deny these allegations? He hung up. The phone rang again immediately. Different number. He didn't answer. 47 missed calls became 63, became 89. His doorbell rang at 11:34 a.m. Marcus stumbled to the door in his underwear, still half drunk, definitely not prepared for the three men in suits standing in his penthouse hallway. Marcus Chen. We're here to repossess the vehicle registered to Chen Technologies. The lease has been terminated due to corporate asset freezing. Keys, please. What? You can't just... We can, and we are. Keys, or we call the police for auto theft. His car. His fucking car. The Tesla Model S he'd posed with for his LinkedIn profile, the one he'd driven to pitch meetings, the one that said, I made it, without words. Gone by noon. The board meeting happened at 2 p.m. Marcus wasn't invited. He found out about it from a Bloomberg notification that popped up on his phone while he was trying to figure out if his credit cards still worked. They didn't. Breaking. Chen Technologies board votes to remove CEO Marcus Chen, effective immediately following SEC investigation and viral assault video showing Chen pushing pregnant woman. David Wong. The man who'd written Marcus's first check, the billionaire who'd believed in him when no one else would, released a statement 30 minutes later. I was deceived about Chen Technologies' metrics and financials. I am cooperating fully with SEC investigators and am appalled by Mr. Chen's personal conduct, particularly the assault of a pregnant woman. Our fund is divesting immediately. Marcus tried to call him. The number was blocked. Tried to call his board members. Blocked, blocked, blocked. Tried to call his business school friends, his golf buddies, his crew who'd been buying rounds last night when he'd been riding high on the feeling of putting someone beneath him in her place. Radio silence. Social death happened faster than financial death, he was learning. You could lose your money in hours, but your reputation in minutes. And once people decided you were toxic, they scattered like rats from a sinking ship they'd been happy to party on 24 hours ago. His mother called again at 4:17 p.m. Your father and I are releasing a statement, she said, her voice cold in a way that made his childhood feel very far away. We are horrified by your actions and do not condone violence against women, especially pregnant women. We failed as parents, and we take responsibility for that failure. Mum, please. We're cutting you off, Marcus, completely, permanently. You're 32 years old and you pushed a woman when she was pregnant with your child once, and now you've pushed another pregnant woman in public, and we will not be associated with what you've become. Valentina wasn't pregnant with my baby this time. She's married to... His mother hung up. Marcus stood in his penthouse, leveraged against company stock that was now worthless, about to be foreclosed on by a bank that had sent 3 emails in the last hour, and felt the foundation crack beneath his feet. 18 hours ago, he'd been on top. Now he was nowhere. And somewhere across the city, in an office he couldn't afford to imagine, a man in a Tom Ford suit was watching the pieces fall with the calm satisfaction of someone who understood that revenge was a dish best served systematically. The city looked different from the 42nd floor. Valentina sat in her reading nook, custom-built, curved to fit the corner where the windows met, surrounded by built-in bookshelves that Jin had designed before she'd even moved in, and watched Seoul spread out beneath her like a promise that had finally been kept. She could see the mall from here, small, distant, irrelevant. 3 days had passed since the marble floor incident. 3 days of news coverage she watched without commenting, supportive messages she read without responding, think pieces and Twitter threads and viral videos she absorbed in silence while Jin moved through their penthouse like a ghost who'd learned to be solid only when she needed him. He hadn't pushed her to talk. Hadn't asked, "Are you okay?" with that expectant tone people used when they needed you to say yes so they could feel better about not knowing how to help. Hadn't tried to fix her feelings like they were problems requiring his particular brand of solution. He just existed beside her. The penthouse was minimalist in the way expensive things often were. But there was warmth here too. Plants she'd brought in slowly, testing whether this place could really be home. Her touches layered over his foundation until the space felt less like a showroom and more like breathing. The sun was setting now, painting the windows gold. Jin appeared from the kitchen carrying her tea, chamomile with honey and lemon, the exact temperature she preferred because too hot made her tongue hurt and too cold made her sad. He didn't ask if she wanted it, just knew. Had known since the third week they dated, back when she was still testing whether men like him could really be trusted or if kindness was just another performance. He set the mug on the small table beside her chair, the one that existed purely to hold teacups and half-read books and the reading glasses she pretended not to need. Then he sat on the floor, right there on the heated hardwood, his back against the wall, his head resting against her knee like she was gravity, and he'd decided to stop fighting it. He had his tablet balanced on his thigh, case files probably, something involving numbers and legal language and decisions that would affect people who'd never know his name. Valentina was reading Mary Oliver, Wild Geese, the poem about not having to be good, about letting the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Neither of them spoke, just breathed in the same space, existing in the kind of silence that felt like safety instead of absence. 3 years ago, she'd been alone in a hospital room at 2 a.m., delivering a daughter who would never breathe, while nurses held her hand because no one else was there. Now she was never alone unless she chose to be. The contrast made her throat tight. "You didn't have to do all that," she said finally, her voice quiet but steady. She meant the investigation, the exposure, the systematic destruction of a man who'd once made her believe she was worthless. The way Jin had turned Marcus Chen's world into ash without ever raising his voice or making threats he couldn't keep. Jin didn't look up from his tablet. I know. No defense, no apology, just acknowledgement. Valentina traced the rim of her teacup with one finger, her other hand resting on her belly where their baby was growing. People will say, "I married you for revenge." This was what she'd been thinking about for 3 days. Not whether Marcus deserved what happened, he did, obviously, objectively, but what people would say about her. What narrative they'd build. Gold digger evolves into revenge seeker. Woman scorned marries billionaire to destroy ex-boyfriend, the kind of story that made her the villain instead of the survivor. People say many things, Jin said, still not looking up. A pause. The city lights were starting to flicker on one by one like stars falling upward. What do you say? Valentina reached down and touched his face, fingers gentle against his jaw, making him look up at her. This man who commanded fear from everyone except her, who held her like she was precious, not fragile, who'd knelt on marble floors in front of crowds because she needed help standing and nothing else mattered. I say I married you because you saw me when I was invisible. Jin turned his head and kissed her palm, his lips warm against her skin. His eyes held hers, dark, steady, full of something that looked like devotion but felt like choice. You were never invisible, Nis Sarang. My love. The Korean endearment soft in his mouth. The world was just blind. His hand came up to rest over hers on her belly, feeling for the baby that was growing there. Their baby, proof that she could have this, safety, love, a future that didn't require sacrifice. That night she finally cried, not for Marcus, not about revenge or justice or viral videos that had turned her pain into content for strangers to consume. She cried for the girl she used to be, 26 years old and working 3 jobs, believing that love meant sacrifice, that partnership meant carrying someone else's dreams while yours suffocated in the dark. She cried for Lily, the baby she'd named alone in a hospital room, the daughter Marcus never asked about. never mourned, never acknowledged as anything more than an inconvenience that had resolved itself. She cried for the years she'd spent believing she deserved nothing, for the version of herself who'd slept in her car, parked in different lots each night, wondering if this was just how life worked for girls who made bad choices and loved wrong men. She cried for the woman who thought she'd never be safe again. Jin held her through all of it. Didn't tell her she was strong. She was tired of being strong, tired of strength being the only option available when you had nothing else. Didn't tell her it was over because trauma didn't end just because justice arrived. Didn't make it about him or his feelings or his need for her to be okay, so he could feel like he'd fixed something. He just held her and said, "I've got you. I'll always have you. You can fall apart. I won't let you shatter." His hand stayed on her belly the whole time, protective, grounding, reminding her that this pregnancy was different. This baby would be born into love and safety. This baby would know a father who chose them every single day. When she was cried out, exhausted, raw, empty in the way that felt like cleaning instead of breaking, he ran her a bath, added the lavender oil she liked, the one that made the bathroom smell like peace, sat on the floor with his back against the tub while she soaked, reading to her when she asked and staying silent when she didn't. Later, he braided her hair before bed. He'd learned how on YouTube, practicing on a mannequin head until his fingers knew the pattern well enough that he didn't have to think about it. His hands were careful, gentle, patient. She had nightmares sometimes. He knew this. Stayed awake until she fell asleep, her breathing evening out into the rhythm of rest. One hand always finding her belly in sleep, as if to check that the baby was still there. Still safe. She woke the next morning in his arms, sun streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, the city spread below like proof that you could fall and still land somewhere soft. "Good morning, Yobo." She buried her face in his chest. "Thank you for letting me cry. Thank you for not needing me to be strong." He kissed her forehead, his lips lingering there. "You are strong. But you don't have to be. Not with me." The messages wouldn't stop coming. 3 months after the mall incident, and 3 weeks after Valentina gave birth to their daughter, her foundation email, the one her lawyer had set up for professional inquiries, received an average of 400 messages per day. Most were supportive. Some were interview requests from journalists who wanted the exclusive story. A few were from lawyers offering pro bono services. But the ones that kept her awake were different. I was her too. My husband emptied our joint account and left me with 3 kids and no way to pay rent. I paid for his medical school and he left me for a resident. I'm still trapped. I have nowhere to go. He pushed me down the stairs when I was pregnant. I lost the baby. I'm still with him because I have nothing. Thousands of women. Thousands of stories that sounded like variations on a theme she knew by heart. Women who'd lost everything. Women who had no safety net. Women who were still trapped in situations that were slowly killing them in ways that left no visible bruises. Valentina sat at the kitchen island in their penthouse, her laptop open, their newborn daughter, named Lily, after the daughter she'd lost. The grief transformed into new life, sleeping peacefully in a bassinet beside her. She read through messages she couldn't answer because what could she possibly say that would fix any of this? Jin appeared behind her with coffee, black, 2 sugars, the way she'd started drinking it after too many sleepless nights spent thinking about women she couldn't help. "I want to start a foundation," she said without looking up. Jin set the coffee beside her laptop and returned to his newspaper at the other end of the island. "Okay. For women leaving abusive situations. Financial abuse specifically." "Okay." She finally looked at him. He was reading the business section, his expression neutral, like she'd just told him she wanted to repaint the living room instead of proposing something that would require millions of dollars and years of work. "It'll be expensive," she said, testing him. Now he looked up, his dark eyes meeting hers with the kind of calm that meant he'd already thought this through before she'd even spoken. "Money isn't the barrier," Nasa rang. "What do you need?" What she needed was something that didn't exist yet. She designed it over 3 months. Late nights at the dining table, papers spread across every surface, Jin working beside her on his own projects, both of them existing in productive silence broken only by occasional questions and coffee refills, and Lily's soft coos from her nearby bassinet. The Second Chance Foundation. Emergency funding for women escaping financial abuse. No questions asked cash grants ranging from $5,000 to $50,000, depending on need. Legal support through lawyers Jin's firm kept on retainer. Job training programs developed with companies that owed Jin favors. Childcare assistance because you couldn't interview for jobs when you had toddlers and no babysitter. Housing support. First month's rent plus deposit plus 3 months of breathing room. Mental health counseling. Financial literacy courses. Everything Valentina wished had existed when she was sleeping in her car. But what made it different, what made it hers, was the absence of bureaucracy. No proving you deserved help. No essays about your trauma for strangers to judge. No waiting periods while committees debated whether your situation was bad enough. Application online, anonymous option available for women whose abusers monitored their every move. Funding decision within 48 hours. First check within 72. Because Valentina remembered the forms at the shelter, remembered questions that felt like accusations, remembered waiting weeks for help that came too late to matter. She was building what she'd needed and never had. Jin provided the initial endowment, $100 million that appeared in the foundation's account like it was nothing, like money was just a tool, and this was finally a purpose worthy of it. He provided office space in one of his buildings downtown, provided his legal team to handle incorporation and tax status, provided connections to people who could make things happen faster than bureaucracy typically allowed. Valentina provided everything else: the vision, the policies, the heart, the lived experience that made this real instead of performative. She hired social workers and lawyers and therapists and case managers, many of them women who'd been through it themselves, who understood in ways that academic credentials couldn't teach. The opening gala was held at the Apex Hotel, owned by Daehyun Group, on a Thursday evening when Seoul's elite gathered in black tie and designer gowns to write checks that would salve their consciences. 500 guests, business leaders, politicians, press with cameras that made Valentina's hands shake. It was her first public appearance since the mall. She stood in the hotel's marble bathroom 30 minutes before her speech, staring at her reflection and trying to remember how to breathe. The woman in the mirror looked composed. Simple black dress, her wedding ring the only jewelry, hair pulled back in a style that suggested confidence she didn't quite feel. Her body had changed, softened in places from pregnancy, stronger in others from survival. Jin appeared in the doorway, baby Lily sleeping against his shoulder. He didn't ask if she was okay, just looked at her with those steady dark eyes and said, "You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do." His hand found the small of her back as they walked to the ballroom. That protective touch she'd come to associate with safety, with being seen, with mattering to someone who mattered. Lily stayed with their nanny in a private room nearby, close enough if Valentina needed her. The podium felt like standing on a cliff. 500 faces looking up at her, cameras recording, silence so complete she could hear her own heartbeat in her ears. No notes. She'd tried writing a speech and every version sounded false, performative, like she was playing a role instead of speaking truth. 3 years ago, I lost everything. The words came out steadier than she expected. The room absorbed them like a held breath. I lost my home, my savings, my sense of safety. She paused. Let that land. I lost a baby. Someone in the third row inhaled sharply. Valentina kept going. The man who caused that loss pushed me, while I was pregnant with my new husband's child, in a mall 3 months ago. Many of you saw the video. But what you didn't see were the 3 years before that push. The years I spent believing I deserved nothing, the months I lived in my car, the days I couldn't afford to eat. Jin was in the back of the room, leaning against the wall, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read but that felt like pride. What saved me wasn't money. It was one person who saw me. She glanced at him briefly. But not everyone has that one person. So this foundation is for the women who don't. Her voice grew stronger. This is for every woman who's been told she's worthless, who's been left with nothing, who's been kicked when she's down, literally or metaphorically. She gripped the podium. This isn't about revenge, it never was. This is about every woman who was told she was nothing and chose to become everything anyway. The applause started small and built into something that sounded like thunder. During the reception, a reporter cornered her near the champagne fountain. "Mrs. Jin, is this foundation about Marcus Chen?" Valentina smiled. Small, genuine. The kind of smile that came from knowing something the questioner didn't. This isn't about him. It never was. She accepted a glass of water from a passing waiter. This is about her, the woman who survives, the woman who rebuilds, the woman who transforms her pain into purpose. I'm just one of millions. She met the reporter's eyes, and we're done being invisible. 6 months later, the foundation had helped 1,247 women, distributed $8.4 million in direct grants. 89% successfully left their abusive situations. 73% were financially independent within a year. Jin's companies covered all operational costs. Every dollar donated went directly to women who needed it. 1 year after the mall incident, the foundation had expanded to 12 cities. Partnerships with domestic violence shelters provided safe referral networks. Legal wins, 34 cases, 34 victories. 3 states updated their financial abuse laws based on policy recommendations Valentina's team had drafted. She testified before Congress in a hearing room that felt like validation, baby Lily with Jin in the gallery behind her. The woman who'd been kicked was now the woman building an empire from ashes. Sunday afternoon, exactly 1 year after the incident. Valentina walked through the main entrance of Apex Mall with Jin beside her and baby Lily in his arms. 3 months old, perfect, named after the daughter Valentina had lost. The grief transformed into new life. The pain alchemized into something that looked like hope. She wore cream silk and tailored trousers, elegant but understated, expensive in the way that whispered instead of shouted. Her confidence was different now. Not the careful performance of someone trying to belong, but the quiet assurance of someone who'd stopped needing permission to exist in spaces that once felt like trespassing. She wasn't here to shop. The Second Chance Foundation was announcing a partnership with Apex Mall, a retail therapy program for domestic violence survivors. Job training through mall retailers who'd committed to hiring women rebuilding their lives. Interview clothing provided free through participating boutiques. A safe space resource centre on the 3rd floor where women could access counsellors and case managers without judgment. The press conference was scheduled for 2 o'clock in the main atrium. But first, Valentina needed to see something. The luxury wing looked exactly the same. Cartier on one side, Dior on the other, marble floors that still cost more per square foot than most people's monthly rent. Soft jazz playing through hidden speakers. Well-dressed shoppers moving through the space like extras in a movie about wealth. Between the 2 boutiques, where she'd fallen, where Marcus had pushed her, where the crowd had gathered with their phones raised, there was something new. A bench. Simple, elegant, white marble that matched the floor, but strong, rated to hold thousands of pounds, built to last decades. A bronze plaque mounted on the backrest, permanent, unmovable. For every woman who got back up. Second Chance Foundation. Valentina stood in front of it, her hand reaching out to touch the plaque. The metal was cool under her fingers. She remembered the incident, the impact, the humiliation, the instinctive way her hands had gone to protect her belly. But she also remembered Jin's hand helping her up, the investigation that had dismantled Marcus's life with surgical precision, the Vindication, the purpose she'd found in the wreckage. She didn't see Marcus. But he was there. In the crowd, at a distance, barely scraping by in ways that would have been unimaginable a year ago. Working retail now? A cruel irony given how he'd once mocked Valentina for jobs he considered beneath him. Living in a studio apartment in a neighborhood he used to drive through without stopping. The restraining order kept him 500 feet away. He couldn't approach, couldn't speak to her, could only watch from the periphery of a life he'd destroyed and a woman he'd underestimated. What Marcus saw, the woman he'd thrown away standing where he'd kicked her, pregnant and vulnerable, transformed into something he couldn't diminish, a queen he'd never deserved. She wasn't looking for him, wasn't thinking about him. He'd become irrelevant to her story, and that casual dismissal, that absolute indifference, was worse than any revenge he could have imagined. Every day he thought about her. Every day the regret felt like choking. Not because he was sorry, he wasn't capable of that kind of self-reflection, but because he'd lost, because she'd been his biggest investment and he'd thrown her away for nothing. Jin appeared beside Valentina, quiet as always, their daughter Lily making small sounds against his shoulder. He didn't ask if she was okay, just stood there, solid, present, waiting for her to process whatever she needed to process. "Ready?" he asked finally. "For the partnership announcement, for the press conference, for the photos that would run in tomorrow's papers showing her standing where she'd fallen, reclaiming the space that had once held her humiliation." Valentina took one last look at the spot, at the bench that marked her rising, at the plaque that honored every woman like her, every woman who'd been kicked and chose to stand anyway. Then she turned away, toward the future, toward the family she'd chosen, toward the empire she'd built from nothing but determination and the belief that pain could become purpose if you were willing to do the work. He thought I was nothing, she thought. That was his last mistake. What she said out loud, smiling at Jin. "Let's go home." To Lily, kissing her forehead. "Mama's got you." To herself, silently. "I got me." They walked away, the three of them, through the luxury wing that had once felt like enemy territory. The bench was visible in the frame if you were watching, and other women were already sitting on it. They didn't know its significance, didn't know the story it represented, just knew it was there, solid and welcoming, a place to rest between stores. Valentina didn't look back. She didn't need to. The past was behind her where it belonged. The future was in her arms and walking beside her and being built daily through foundation work that mattered more than revenge ever could. The Second Chance Foundation had helped over 5,000 women escape financial abuse. 5,000 lives changed, 5,000 futures reclaimed. 5,000 stories that started with pain and ended with possibility. She was just one of millions, but she was no longer invisible. That's how a woman who lost everything became everything. Hit subscribe if you believe in karma, drop a like if you're Team Valentina, and comment which moment made you say yes. See you next time, lovelies, where we celebrate women who rise.